Morning church. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Calvin. I'm one of the youth leaders here. Born and raised in New Zealand, and I'm 21, and I've been coming to NHC for 8 years now. So it's flown by. I don't know how it's been 8 years. I was trying to figure it out earlier and I went, I don't know how. But basically the main way I remember it is however old Isaiah is, because when I first started coming to NHC, Katie was pregnant with Isaiah. I grew up in a non-Christian household, and I was never really taught anything about religion growing up because both my parents were atheists. My mum actually grew up as a Catholic, but she kind of strayed away as she got older. But I was lucky enough when I was young. I've travelled a lot of places, so I got to see the religions all around the world, and I was always kind of fascinated by them. And kind of was wanting to find out more about them, but of course when we got back here I'd never kind of delved into in religion for myself when I got here. I have two sisters. Now when I say that, a lot of people get quite confused who know me because they only think of me having one sister, but I will come to that and I'll explain it in a second, as it's quite important to the story. I went to Newlands College, and I was lucky enough to become quite good friends with Bella Artie and Bella Gates, and one day they started trying to get me to come to NHC Youth, and they were very persistent, and after I think about like 6 weeks of me saying no constantly, I gave in, and I definitely don't regret it, because so the first night I came was a Bible study night. We were at Mark and Janine's house, and I remember David Artie was over from Hawaii, and the main thing I remember from that night was he was going around the circle playing a little ukulele, kind of praying and talking to everyone, and he got to me and he just says, "You are home." And that was my first ever night, and I'm a very inquisitive person, and so I kind of wanted to know what that meant. So he definitely knew how to hook me in. But yeah, I was basically not paying attention up until then, until he basically looked me dead in the eyes and said that, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I just I couldn't wait to be there next Monday or even on the Friday, and was basically just waiting for Bella and Bella to ask me if I wanted to go. And I basically jumped at the opportunity as soon as they asked. During the next year and a half, I went to my first Easter camp and as many nights of youth and Bible study as I could. But the main thing around getting me to actually come to faith was there were two major hurdles that I suffered with in my journey to come to the Lord. First was my mental health, and then the second was my first sister. So like I said, I have two sisters. I'm the oldest of the three of us, but sadly when my first sister, Sophia, was born, she had complications at birth, which led to her only surviving for 7 days. She was born on the 1st of June and then passed on the 7th. That became a massive hurdle for me because in my mind, if God so loved the world and loved every single being, then how come she never got to see past 1 week? It troubled me that we are taught that only those who come to give their life to the Lord will have a place in heaven, but she wasn't even given that chance. It wasn't until my second trip to Easter camp that I made peace with this. Through lots of prayer with the youth leaders at the camp, especially like Jake Wikihana, we basically were standing in the main hall at the Easter camp about half an hour after most people had already left. And I just had a night of revelation where I could finally see past the anger. But mainly because of Romans 1:20, Paul talks about people who are given the opportunity to speak to God and to seek Him, and if they turn a blind eye, that they are the ones who are unable to rest in heaven. But my belief ever since then is that Sophia was never truly given that opportunity, so there is still a chance that she will be there when I arrive. Now the second of those two hurdles was my mental health. It was probably the harder thing for me to overcome, as I always looked at things a bit differently from the way especially my parents did and my sister. But I it kind of led me to be a bit of an outcast during school, and I was never really tight with a bunch of people, mainly because I feel like I was always trying to be someone I actually wasn't. And that led me down quite a dark path as I came into my early teenage years. And it got to a point where I thoroughly considered taking my own life. I was constantly thinking that I would never be good enough and that I didn't have any belonging, and that's what drove me to constantly try to be someone that I wasn't, even when I was out or inside my own home. The only times I left the house was to go to youth or to go to school. Other than that, I didn't play any sports anymore, even though from the age of 5 until about the age of 14, I was constantly playing sports. I stopped for this 2 years. It got to a point where one day I found myself standing at a bridge in Jabil, the one that goes over top of the motorway. And I was standing there for probably about 20 minutes, just contemplating everything and whether I was going to walk away or just jump over. Luckily for me, God was watching over me, and one of my best mates, his name was Caleb, he had just got his license, and he figured out where I was and drove and basically pulled me into his car off the edge of the bridge and drove me straight to my dad's work. Even though technically it was illegal, but I don't care anymore. And I didn't know he definitely didn't, because he was also speeding. But yeah, he pulled me straight off, and I've never been so thankful for anyone, and definitely so thankful to God for that, because if it wasn't for that moment, there may be a chance that I am not here anymore. After that day, I came to realize through counseling and prayer and some amazing friends and leaders around me that no matter what, I will always be loved, and that I don't need to be someone else to be loved. I am who I am, and I was created wonderfully in God's image. Now, this is going to sound super cliche, but ever since then, being myself has made me the happiest person I could ever have aspired to be. 16-year-old me looking at me now would think I was lying, but God has guided me down such an amazing path that every day feels like a miracle. I am now in a job I love. I completed college, passed all 3 NCA levels. I've given my life to the Lord. I've been baptized. I'm now a youth leader to some of the most amazing kids who inspire me daily. And I get to see I got to see it from the perspective of the teenager, what we all know we went through, but as a leader I think that's important to see for them, because then you can step back and just let the Lord take over, because you don't need to be involved in every way. But yeah, God has definitely truly taken my life from what felt like it was upside down and flipped it up the right way.
Amen.